paper reports that two of the male prostitutes were given a late-night tour of the White House last year.
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers!
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Nick Bryant Podcast. Goodfellas is in my pantheon of all-time favorite movies. Goodfellas is about a crew of hoodlums in the Lucchese crime family. And I once interviewed the acting boss of the Lucchese crime family, Anthony Gaspipe Casso, in the Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado. So I've taken a deep dive into the Lucchese crime family. Today, my guest is Steve Grevera, who's also taken a deep dive into the Lucchese family and the actual soldiers and associates that were part of Goodfellas. And he's here today to separate the movie's facts from fictions. Steve, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for coming on the Nick Bryant Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Henry Hill is kind of the alpha and the omega of Goodfellas. Mm-hmm. And it was Goodfellas is from a book written by Nicholas Pileggi called Wise Guy. And tell us a little bit about Henry Hill.
Sure. Henry Hill was born in 1942, right? When he was around 11, 12, 13 years of age, right? He saw there were some guys across the street who basically owned a taxi company as well as a pizza joint, I think, around the corner. And he fell infatuated with the mafia. He looked up to these guys. In a neighborhood where his father didn't make a lot of money, he saw that these guys made quite a bit of money. So he basically starts to work for them and then begins to work his way up at first legitimately, and then starts to work his way up and begins to do crimes for them. And he is working under a man by the name of Paul Vario, who was a Lucchese captain. And then I believe he even was part of the administration at one point, or at least was considered for the role.
Paul Vario was a very powerful captain.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting the way that he's portrayed in Goodfellas is that no one messes with Paulie.
Right.
And so we've got Henry Hill, this young aspiring hoodlum.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a book about him and then there's a movie about him, but I'm sure that you found that there's fictions and facts that are different.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And what major fictions have you found out about Henry Hill?
Well, I think the one big thing about when it comes to the movie is he's painted and his crew is painted as being extremely successful criminals. And I would say that's not necessarily true, right? Henry Hill was, as Michael Francese, who knew him from that time period, and others have said, he was sort of like low on the totem pole. He wasn't really as successful as he made himself out to be, right? His kids also wrote a book. I don't know if you ever read it. It's called On the Run: A Mafia Childhood, right? They paint him as being an abuser, not really there, very selfish, compared to the movie where he's, helping his family out, is supportive of them. Of course, he is a criminal, so you had to take that into account. But, I mean, that's one of the big things, I think, is that the successfulness that he has in Goodfellas isn't really what happened in real life. He did commit crimes. He was a drug addict at one point as well, and he was an alcoholic too, which he struggled with his whole life, as well as when he went into the program, which I think he got kicked out of witness protection towards the end of the 80s.
He went to Nebraska first, right?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, my memory says he had where he went. One place was definitely Nebraska. I think he may have went to Washington too, or Oregon, if I remember right.
Yeah, he ended up in Washington. I believe he got busted in both places for selling drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is with him is as soon as he went there, one of the first place, I forget what state it was in, it might have been Nebraska, he basically was bragging that he was in witness protection or that he was in the mob or something. Basically had to relocate him quickly from one place to another, and the FBI did get sick of him at a certain point.
And with Henry Hill, do you think that the Fed's portrayal of him is accurate? Or do you think that the Feds puffed him up to be a really good witness?
I heard that he wasn't really that good of a witness, from what I understand. I heard because he committed all these crimes, right, with Jimmy Burke and that whole crew and the Lucchese family under Paul Vario. He was close to Paul Vario and his brothers too, for that matter. But the only thing that he can get Jimmy on, from what I heard and read from the past, was the Boston point shaving scheme thing, which was what basically they found Jimmy Burke guilty on, was the Boston point shaving scandal with Sweeney and Richard Cohen from back in 82, 83, I think was when the trial and his conviction was. Then I think he got convicted on something else, Jimmy, and ended up dying in prison. But as a witness, I don't think Henry Hill was that vital to the FBI. He wasn't as good of a witness as they painted him to be, basically.
When I interviewed Anthony Gaspipe Casso, the former boss of the Lucchese crime family, he told me a number of things. He told me about using cops for hits, NYPD detectives for hits. And actually, I focused the article on that.
Mm-hmm.
But he contradicted, they said, be honest. And he contradicted Sammy the Bull Gravano on a number of things.
Right. Yeah.
And Sammy the Bull the Feds really wanted to get Gotti.
Right.
And Sammy the Bull the Fed said that Sammy the Bull committed 19 murders, which is, and I think that there was probably a focus group at the FBI or Department of Justice, and they said, well, how many murders can we attribute to Sammy Gravano? You know,
right.
He's killed a lot of people. Let's stick with 19. If we get into the 20s, it's Ted Bundy-like numbers. So let's just stick with 19. And then he was also a drug dealer, which the Feds said he never did. So they take these criminals and they said, well, he was a liar and a cheater and a sociopath. But now he's joined the witness protection program and he's a cherub.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That has been sold to multiple juries.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of humorous. And in Gravano's case, so Gravano ended up getting 5 years for 19 murders. And because Gaspipe was contradicting Gravano by telling the truth, I do believe that Gaspipe was telling the truth, that he was a drug dealer. Gaspipe got banished to the Supermax prison for, I believe, 13 life sentences. Now, I'm not saying that Gaspipe shouldn't be in prison, because he was a little on the homicidal side, but it just shows what the Feds will do. And in the movie Goodfellas, and also in the book, makes Hill out to be this sterling witness.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't think he was that. I mean, and the Feds will try to do that. They'll try to paint the picture that Henry was a perfect, or anybody who turns on these guys. None of them are perfect. They're all criminals, right? Let's put that right out of the way. Sammy the Bull Gravano was a murderer, right? Gaspipe was a murderer. I mean, he started killing all those guys, and I think what happened was if I remember correctly, was El Diarco basically, he tried to get him even, and then he ends up seeing that one of the guys walks in with the gun to a restroom and walks out at a hotel, I forget the name of it, but they walk out and he doesn't have the gun, and the next person he thinks is going to go into the restroom is going to get that gun. He ends up turning on him, and it kind of spirals from there. But none of these guys are perfect, but the Feds will try to do that. They'll try to paint the picture, hey, listen, we're gonna puff you up and make you look good, and basically try to get convictions on these other guys.
Well, El Diarco became a star witness for the Feds, and they used him in multiple cases. But he was lying about a lot of different things. He was portraying himself as the boss of the Lucchese family, and he was never more than a captain.
Right.
And there were a number of other lies that Diarco, and the Gaspipe article was really edifying to me. it just showed me how far the feds would go to clean someone's background up so they would be a good witness.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What else can you tell us about Henry Hill? The real Henry
So
Hill.
the real Henry, as I said, he started with the Lucchese family under Paul Vario. He was working for them in the early 1960s. I believe he goes into the army, right? He gets kicked out. I believe he was actually selling food or something, if I remember correctly. And they find out about he gets kicked out. He supposed, according to his words, he tries to get away from the life, but that quickly fails. He ends up back out in the streets. He gets arrested, gets married, gets arrested in the mid 1960s, and I think that's his first arrest, if I remember correctly. And then basically he runs into Jimmy Burke, I think actually before the army, and he gets involved with the Roberts Lounge crew, which Jimmy basically it's a club that Jimmy owned, and this crew he had was formed there. You have basically a set of members, and Henry was one of them, committing crimes, mostly hijackings, which was what that crew was known for.
But that crew also murdered a number of people. And it's interesting, was both Goodfellas and Wise Guy don't make Hill out to be a murderer. And what was he a murderer?
In my opinion, no.
No?
No, I don't believe so. He was there when they killed people, but I do not believe that he killed anybody himself. Did he hit people? Did he lay down beatings? Absolutely. Did he kill anyone? No.
But he certainly facilitated getting rid of a number of bodies.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The one that always comes up is William Benvenna, Billy Bats in the movie.
Billy Bats.
Mm-hmm.
Give us a deep dive on Billy Bats.
Okay, so there's a lot of things about Billy Bats that are incorrect. If you go onto Google and you search up on a website like Wikipedia, which is wrong all around, they paint his birthday as the early 1920s. Billy Bats was born, I believe, in 1932 to an Italian father, but his mother was Irish. So the movie says he was a made member of the Gambino family. Well, for one, the books were closed in the mid 1950s, 1955, 56, 57. So he was very young. Could he have been made? Absolutely, a member, but I don't think he was. And his mother was Irish. So he was likely not a made member of the mafia. Now, he does get indicted and convicted of, I think he gets convicted. He may not actually. He gets indicted at least and arrested for dope. He's peddling dope.
And he was busted with Carmine Galante, right?
Yes.
Carmine
Yeah,
Galante was the boss of the Banana Crime family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He gets arrested. He gets out in the late 1960s, I believe, if not 1970. And from what I understand and what I read, he had a loan sharking, bookmaking operation, something to that effect. Jimmy Burke moved in on that. And there's this huge thing going on between both of them at the time, saying that he wants his action back. Jimmy didn't want to give him that. And that was another reason for him being murdered. Plus, he insulted Tommy DeSimone, who was, by all accounts, a psychopath, a very, very crazy dude.